Welcome everyone to this latest How the Light Gets In festival talk. It's my absolute delight and pleasure to have the chance to talk with Michael Sandel about his new book, The Tyranny of Merit. So Michael, let's just start, if I may, with just the title, The Tyranny of Merit. Can you give us a sense of the overall thrust of the book?
Yes, merit on the face of it seems a good thing. Who could be against giving people jobs or assigning social roles on the basis of merit? And yet, in our time, so it seems to me, Jesse, merit has become a tyranny, especially when the way we define merit is largely based on the money people make, as if that were a true measure of their contribution to the common good. The basic idea of the book is this: for decades, the divide between winners and losers has been deepening. It's been poisoning our politics, driving us apart. The problem is partly the deepening inequality of income and wealth that has come about as a result of globalization. But it's not only that. It has also to do with the changing attitudes toward success and failure that have come with it. Those who've landed on top have come to believe that their success is their own doing, the measure of their merit. And by implication, that those who've been left behind have no one to blame but themselves. This is the harsh side of the meritocratic promise. And the book is about really how we've landed in this deeply polarized political condition, and how the way we've understood merit and meritocracy has reinforced the divide, and then finally, how we might begin to climb out of it.
So at the beginning then, you were talking about the oppressive effect that what you might call not just the focus on merit, but the idea of a meritocracy in principle might have on those, in a way, a corrupting effect at the top end. People come to believe their own PR, and at the bottom end, because somehow people are being instructed by some elite to believe that they deserve the place that they've been allocated in some way, if I've understood that. Tell me about is that what you really think of as meritocratic hubris? It's a wonderful way of describing this problem.
Yes, by meritocratic hubris, I mean the tendency of the successful to inhale too deeply of their success, to forget the luck and good fortune that helped them on their way, and to assume that since they consider that they have risen thanks to their efforts and talents, the tendency to look down on those who haven't, to assume that they must simply lack the effort and hard work and talent to flourish in the new economy. And a big part of this, perhaps we'll get to it, Jesse, is the idea that the way to compete and win in the global economy is to get a four-year university degree. The idea being that the answer to the inequalities that have deepened is simply or primarily individual upward mobility through a university degree. This induces a kind of credentialism among the winners who come to over-valorize the possession of a university degree, and it leads to a kind of demoralization, even humiliation, among those who don't have a university degree, who, after all, are the majority of our fellow citizens. Nearly two-thirds, we easily forget this, nearly two-thirds of our fellow citizens in the UK and in the US do not have a four-year university degree. So it's folly to have created an economy that sets as a condition of dignified work and a decent life a four-year university degree.
One of the things that's so catching about the book, and arresting indeed about it, is the moment at the beginning where you talk about your own experience with your students at Harvard. And I suppose two things. One is how they all, without fail, attribute their success in having made it to Harvard to the unaided brilliance and laborious hard work that they've put in, and also their utter unawareness that actually, in many ways, American social mobility is thoroughly second-rate by international standards.
Because I'll come to the students in a moment, but for many years in America, we've consoled ourselves with the greater degree of inequality in our society than in many European societies, for example, saying, here, we don't need to worry much about inequality because we have a mobile society. No one is consigned to the class of his or her birth, unlike those class-ridden societies of Europe, which do worry so much about inequality. We are an upwardly mobile society, so we don't need to worry about it. And this may actually account for the rather less generous welfare state that the US has by comparison with the UK and European social democracies. But this consoling thought no longer, if it ever did, fits the facts on the ground. One's chances of rising one generation to the next are actually less in the United States than they are in a great many European countries and in Canada. The chance of rising from the bottom fifth of the income scale to the top is about, depending on the study, 4 to 8%. Even the chance of rising to middle class is less than 50%. So we need another way of contending with the deepening inequalities of recent decades than simply to say, if you go off and get a university degree, then maybe you too will be able to rise. Now, I've not addressed your question, Jesse, about my students. I don't want to seem overly harsh to them. I have no, because in many ways they are deeply engaged in activities of public service and good works for their community and for the less fortunate. So I don't mean for the moment to suggest that they are selfish and unconcerned with the public good. What I do notice about them, which is telling with regard to the question of meritocracy, is given what it takes to compete for entry into these highly selective US colleges and universities, young people's entire adolescent years, sometimes earlier, are converted into a stress-strewn gauntlet of meritocratic striving, packaging oneself, competing for grades, engaging in extracurriculars, doing good works in distant lands, all the better to impress an admissions committee. It's almost impossible, and much of this superintended by often rather pushy parents who may hire, if they can, private college consultants who are experts at packaging these young people. But there is such a strenuous insistence on effort and striving and hard work that it's almost impossible not to emerge from this believing that winning admission is down to one's own effort and one's own doing. And so I'm not so much criticizing my students as sympathizing with the wounds that afflict even the winners, because by the time they arrive, many of them, accomplished and gifted, are so driven to achieve, so accustomed to pleasing through achievement their parents, their teachers, the imagined admissions committees, that they find it difficult to step back and explore and reflect on what's worth caring about and what they really would love to study. So my worry is that the credentialism is crowding out the love of learning.
Yes, I mean, the idea of the free play of the mind that was supposed to be the conception of a liberal arts degree at a university or of, as it were, a rounded human being, but rounded by aspiration and interest rather than by one's curriculum vitae or bio is a distant one in this context. And I thought that was a point well made. And also, I think the point about...
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.